Hello, I hope you're there. I wish I could be with you, but as you can see, I'm at home. It'll be a month or two, I suppose, before I can come and meet you and talk to you in school. Today, I want to tell you about Palm Sunday. It was the beginning of Jesus' last week. He'd had a happy life, wandering around the countryside of his beautiful land with his friends. He'd done a lot of kind things for people and worked hard to make their lives better. But all that was coming to an end. It was time for him to go up to Jerusalem, the capital city, where it was all going to happen. What he'd realized over the last few months is that it was his job to become the king. He'd been told that when he was a child, but somehow that had all been forgotten for a while. And now he realized that it was what he had to do. The trouble was that his country was no longer free. They all remembered when they'd had a wonderful, magnificent king called King David, and they remembered his time long, long ago as a kind of golden age when everybody was happy and life was good. But many centuries before, the land had been conquered by an invading army, and now the land of Israel was under the control of the Romans. There were soldiers everywhere. And the emperor, well, he lived 1,000 or more miles away in Rome. He was the ruler of the world. He wouldn't allow Israel to have its own king. But Jesus knew what he had to do. Hundreds of years before a prophet called Zechariah had written. One day, Zechariah wrote, one day we will have a king again. One day we will be free to live in our own way and in our own land. And listen to this, Zechariah went on. This is how you'll know it's the king. He'll come into Jerusalem riding on a donkey. He'll come into Jerusalem on a donkey, and he'll ride all the way to the temple. So Jesus knew what he had to do. He found a donkey, and he rode it into Jerusalem. There were crowds of people, and as soon as they saw the donkey and the man riding on it, they knew their king had returned. They rushed to cover the road with their clothes so he wouldn't get his feet dirty. They pulled down branches from the palm trees to wave them. Tell you about palm branches, I've got some here. This is what they look like. They're dry, which means they've been off the tree for some time, and they wave them on special occasions. And why do you think they waved them? It might seem a bit sad to go just waving leaves around, but the point is that if you get enough people waving these, they make a wonderful noise. They make a lot of dust too, but I'll clear that up in a moment. So there they were waving their branches, and they all began to shout the word, Hosanna! Hosanna! I wonder if that's a word you've heard before. Hosanna! And it was a word in their own language, and it meant, save us and help us, save us now, Hosanna! Save us from the Romans, of course. And so Jesus rode his little donkey all the way to the temple. And then he climbed down, ready to go in. All that's in the story as you find it in the Bible, and I'll read it to you from the Bible in just a second. But there's one bit of the story you don't find in the Bible, and you must make up your minds whether this bit of the story is true or not. When Jesus got off his plain little grey donkey, the crowd all gasped in amazement. On the back of this plain little grey donkey was a cross, a black cross. He'd been given a cross to wear as part of his coat, which all donkeys would wear from that time on, to show the honour they'd been given, the privilege of carrying the king into the city. So I'll read you the story from the Bible. When Jesus came near Jerusalem, he sent 2 of his disciples on ahead. "Go into the village over there," he said, "and you'll find a donkey tied up. Untie it and bring it to me. If anyone says anything to you about taking the donkey, say, 'The master needs them,' and he'll send the donkey straight away." And so off they went. This happened so that Zechariah the prophet's words would be fulfilled when Zechariah said, "Tell this to your children, here comes your king, humble, riding a donkey." So the disciples went off, and they did as Jesus had told them. They brought the donkey and put their cloaks on the donkey, and Jesus sat on it. A huge crowd gathered, and they spread their cloaks on the road. Others cut palm branches from the trees and waved them. And the crowds went on ahead of them, and those who were following behind, they all shouted out, "Hosanna now! Hosanna to the Son of King David! God's blessing on the one who's coming, the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven." When they came into Jerusalem, the whole city was gripped with excitement. "Who is this?" they were saying. "This is Jesus," the crowds replied. "This is the one we've been waiting for." So that's the story as you read it in the Bible. Jesus, the King, rides into Jerusalem on his donkey, as the prophet had said. The crowds all shout, "Hosanna! Save us now." They wave their palm branches. They call him the Son of David. It doesn't actually mean that David was directly his father. It means that Jesus' grandfather's 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 grandfather 1,000 years ago had been King David, and now he was the descendant of King David come to take the throne back. So what do you think happened when he arrived back at the temple? Do you think the crowds followed him in and proclaimed him king, and there was a big coronation and everything went on good from that time onwards? Well, not quite. I can tell you what happened next. He got off the donkey and he looked around the temple and he thought, "That looks good." And then he went off to a friend's house for dinner. Why did he do just that? Well, there's another week to come. The whole of Holy Week stretches in front of us. A lot will happen during that time. He needed rest. I'm sure you'll hear the story of those next few days, but I shall be back after Easter to tell you what happened at the end of this Holy Week. Thank you for your company. Thanks for listening. I hope the rest of your day is lovely. I hope you have a good break for Easter, and I'll look forward to seeing you next term.